Welcome to the Turd Nerds. We are the functional gastroenterology podcast discussing all things poop. Before we take the plunge into today's episode, let us tell you a bit about ourselves. I'm Dr. Rebecca Sand, a naturopathic physician and acupuncturist, and I specialize in all things gastroenterology, hormones, and fertility.
I'm Dr. Ami Kapadia, and I'm a medical doctor trained in family medicine and functional medicine with a special interest in gastrointestinal health, food and environmental allergies, and autoimmune disease.
And I'm Dr. Ilana Gurevich, a naturopathic physician and acupuncturist who is board certified in naturopathic gastroenterology. I specialize in inflammatory bowel disease, IBS, and other functional digestive disorders. Let's jump into today's episode.
The following discussion is for educational purposes only and not intended to diagnose or treat any diseases or conditions. Please consult your doctor before incorporating any of this information into your care. The information presented on this podcast is not medical advice.
All right, welcome back, Turds. We have a really special episode today. You will notice there are 4 Turds here today because this is a sponsored episode where we get to interview our friend and colleague, Dr. Andrea McBeth, who is the founder and CEO of Thaena. And we're going to pick her brain about all the science and history and background of this product and what they're doing as a company.
This one of a kind, literally, it's kind of a crazy story.
It is a crazy story. Yeah. If you're not familiar with it, you're going to get an earful and how we use this clinically, what cool things are coming down the pipeline for it. Should we just start diving in with questions?
I happen to know, me and Andrea sat on the Gastro-EMP board forever ago. I happen to know the backstory, and it's a great effing backstory. Can you share us how this really interesting, A, what is it, and B, how was it born?
Sure. Yeah, I'm so excited to be here because I'm also
jazz right now.
I know. I'm a turd nerd at heart too, and
in practice, if we're honest.
Right, I know. It's like all comes down to the poop, right? Yeah, all of us.
Man, so it does. That's why we're here. That's why we're gathered here today.
And so I'll give I'm a naturopath, and I was a scientist before that, which is where we met and connected, and then worked in the Gastro-EMP. And what we were doing was I was working with another colleague of ours, Mark Davis, who really catalyzed this idea and brought some technology to Portland here, which is super cool. And worked with another ND, Carmen Campbell, and they started a stool bank. And a stool bank, to do fecal transplant, just for definition, is taking healthy donor stool from a donor that, we can define health and there's nuance there, but not somebody who's sick, and give it to somebody either via colonoscopy or oral capsule or NG tube.
Or enema back then.
Or enema. And what's incredible is taking that healthy donor stool and giving it to a recipient, i.e. fecal transplant, has all this impact. And it was reintroduced for C. diff, which is an infectious diarrheal disease.
I think that's how most people probably know it in the literature, because it's the only FDA approved way to do fecal microbiome transplants.
Yeah. And it started because there was a case, it's Chinese literature mentions it, it's standard of care in veterinary medicine, but it really, because of the ick factor and because of hygiene hypothesis and just kind of our fecal oral transmission of disease awareness, didn't get reintroduced into the 2000s, like 2008.
Out of desperation?
Because of antibiotic resistant C. diff. So you have these people who are dying from a bacterial opportunist. Mm-hmm. All of the tools in the toolbox have been tried. It's totally antibiotic resistant. And there was a case paper from 1950 of 4 people who were treated via poop smoothie, essentially. Oh boy. And effectively, oh come on, it's a Turd Nerd podcast.
We're gonna get so much today on me.
I don't remember if it was.
We'll just work. Yeah,
it was magic. It was magic, but it cured all 4 of those
acidic
cases, and then this microbiologist.
So that's amazing.
I know, and that we could rediscover that work from the 1950s, apply what we were learning about the microbiome, look at antibiotic-resistant opportunists like this, and this researcher in Australia, Thomas Barodi, sort of spearheaded this, and then it's like 80 to 90% effective,
which is insane for
Yeah,
C. diff, which does not have great stats.
and it kills people.
And it's the more, if you get it once and you get it again, the likelihood of you getting it a third time, a fourth time, a fifth time is like through the roof.
I know.
Good luck getting antibiotics and do anything for it at that point.
Yeah.
And then the other cool part is it's on this dovetailing of a renaissance in understanding this microbiome organ system, right?
Totally.
And so then C. diff is cured. A group in Boston called Human-derived starts providing poop to hospitals. There's all this traction and excitement about sort of a new wave of the way we think about blood banking systems, right? We can't synthesize human blood. We've been trying to forever.
Yeah.
The assumption is there's a similar analogy to poop.
It's too complicated.
It's too complicated, or we just aren't there yet, right? And then everybody's like, whoa, okay, let's just like take a pause. Mark was working in Crohn's and colitis, which was another place where there was preliminary evidence in this
Of efficacy.
for fecal
nutrition.
transport. And then, but it's like, but we don't know what we don't know. And there was a theoretical infectious disease risk.
Yeah.
And so that's really where like all of this hype hit a brick wall. And I think for me, that's where what we did was really trying to recognize that our microbiome is super important. Patients need support. We all work with patients that you're like, I just tried everything and I don't know how to help you.
Yeah, I've never had that. No, I'm just kidding. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, so you're starting your professional career as a naturopathic physician.
Doing
you're
fecal
running,
transplant.
and you're running the stool bank, and then all of a sudden, all of this regulation comes and literally brick walls your progress.
And to like clarify what that is for our listeners is like when you're transplanting poop into people, it comes with all the bugs. Like that's in theory why people thought it was super beneficial.
Totally.
But those are good bugs, bad bugs, bugs that cause
All
metabolic
the
changes,
bugs.
mood changes.
And we're like coming off of this decade of probiotic marketing that really emphasized colonization. And so the paradigm was really stuck in that, right? Like who are the good bugs, who are the bad bugs?
Oh, I see.
And why do we have to keep it alive and why that's the most important thing?
Right.
But there was nuance there in that you can kind of give people fecal transplant any way you want and it still kind of worked. And so that theory that you had to have this colonization sort of fell apart. Like there is good pre-post testing that showed the recipient's microbiome changed. But then there was a study in 2017 that showed they did that with a sterile filtrate. So they took the poop, took the bacteria out, left the phage and other things, and the C. diff still got cured and the microbiome still shifted.
Okay, Andrea, can you back up? So
Yeah.
We know now that with probiotics as well that it's not really colonization; it's the other effects.
It's trans.
Okay,
and then hold on, I got another question.
Yeah.
Can you define the phage part to make that a little more clear for people?
That was my question too, honey.
Okay, so phage are what we call viruses that infect bacteria.
Okay.
So it's a virus, but it's a special virus because it's not a virus that infects our cell. And they are a part of the ecosystem of the microbiome. They're super important. There's phage therapy. They can kill bacteria or modulate the environment. So they're like an important part of this ecosystem, the same way fungus is.
Right.
We think about, our fungus microbiome, and then there's a phageome, and then there's the bacterial
Microbiome.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that is all part of this kind of, we're thinking about the organ ecosystem of the microbiome.
Okay.
And then the early day assumption was that probiotics were coming in and we were transplanting a tree for a tree, right? But it turns out that's not really true.
That explains so much.
Right.
Also, just
And
in clinical practice.
Probably
They work for a bit of time. But
it's just the probiotics or
bugs.
postbiotics.
Right.
Well, no, it's just the little metabolites that our bacteria, the probiotics are making as pass through. So it's like the same premise, which we haven't gotten to what we did with the poop,
Okay.
but like the same premise of what we did with the poop by sterilizing it and putting it in an autoclave.
So phages are gone, bacteria is gone, anything living or quasi-living.
In our product.
Yep.
But the aha moment came when this initial paradigm was challenged because of filtrate with phage and other stuff was used to cure C. diff.
So it wasn't totally sterilized. This is 2017.
In 2017, it's I'll give you guys the link to put in the
Totally.
show notes. But it was like, a small cohort, 10, I think, participants, and everybody in the fecal transplant space kind of like saw it and ignored it and was like, we don't want to change the paradigm.
Yeah.
That's really inconvenient truth. We're going to just keep going on focusing on live bacteria because so much had been invested in that.
Right.
And then we were sitting in the lab with our poop and
As one
thinking
does.
about
Quite
well,
bad.
it's like, well, like you're like, we have this like golden naturopathic, you know, vaginally born and breastfed and organic
Golden
diets,
children.
like
Yeah,
golden poop in our freezer.
totally.
And
There's so much.
I can't give it to anybody
Right.
because of infectious disease risk, which is valid. And then I was like, but I don't think it needs to be alive. Like this
Right.
study said it didn't need to be alive, and I don't fully believe it's just the viruses.
So you're like one of the few people that listen to that. And
Well,
heeded.
it was convenient for me to
Right.
listen to it.
Right? You're
because-
really an idea.
yeah, and I was like, what if it's these small molecules they make? Because my previous work had been in cell communication, and you know, it's not that the bacteria are speaking directly to us. I think of it as like, what is the language that they use to
Right.
communicate signals to
Yeah.
us? And they're separated by a mucus layer.
Yeah.
And they can't or shouldn't be traversing the mucus layer and directly binding with their surface molecules. So they're spitting.
Us, you mean?
Yeah, our
cells.
human cells.
And they are the bacteria.
They are the bacteria in our
We gotta get the
microbiome.
characters right.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
jump around a lot, so you guys really got it. This is the most fun. This is like the wonkiest conversation I've started in the first 5 minutes ever.
Okay,
But
we just dive in.
You are speaking our love language.
I know, it's like I gotta, but like, so if you think of like we're using words to communicate with each
Right.
other across
They
the
don't
space.
speak English in there.
They're not speaking in like direct touch.
Right.
They're speaking in languages.
Quorum
and the
sensing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the quorum sensing is via small molecules. So we will define postbiotics, I will define postbiotics as the small molecules that these bacteria make to communicate with each other
Mhm.
and us.
Postbiotic
Can we
means
just-
coming out of the bacteria.
Yeah, so if you think about it, probiotic is the bug, and then the molecules or secondary metabolites they make we'll colloquially call the postbiotics.
That's a very important term that we are seeing more and more in the
Yes.
literature.
Yeah.
One more time. Postbiotics are the hormones or
They can act as hormones.
Okay.
They're just small molecules. So there is a definition of postbiotics. It's for marketing.
okay.
So frame it that way. There's like a not consensus scientifically
Uh-huh.
of what a postbiotic is, but there is like the sense that if you heat kill a probiotic, what's left is postbiotics.
Okay.
Okay.
Or I think about all the small molecules that bacteria make metabolically.
Mhm.
So they take a broccoli and they convert it to a butyrate or
Yeah.
whatever, oversimplified. But you know, those things that they are making are their postbiotics.
So they're all made by the bacteria.
It's a prebiotic that's been metabolically changed by a probiotic into a postbiotic.
Got it.
That is so simple. Can I just say that one more time?
Mhm.
It's a prebiotic, some kind of digestible fiber that gets taken up and broken down or digested by a bug, a probiotic.
Yeah.
And what it excretes is a postbiotic.
Yes.
I just want to say, I am deep in this world. I am so deep in the world. I have convinced Ami and Rebecca to talk to me about poop every 2 weeks.
I know, it's great. I love
I
it.
never
It's like a lot of
understood that.
convincing.
Yeah. And I think that is a way easier framework if we're like, okay, we're not teasing apart like a marketing label on a
Yes.
brand. We just think about it with like what's happening. You eat polyphenols, you eat fiber,
Fruits, vegetables,
fruits,
Cellulose.
vegetables,
cellulose.
even
That's
just
good.
Acacia
breast milk
family.
sugars like
Okay.
HMOs or FOS or GOS or anything that's labeled a prebiotic is
Yeah.
really just something that can be changed by an enzyme within the bacteria, so metabolically changed,
Uh-huh.
eaten,
Yeah.
Mhm.
used, broken down.
I like how I
Something's-
eat and when in quotes because
Yeah.
it's true they don't have a mouth or a digestive system.
Yeah, but they're like their little proteins are shifting or adding something or whatever, metabolically shifting, and then the metabolite or molecule or whatever is a signaling molecule that they're using to talk to each other.
Okay.
So they can use it to quorum sense. They can use it to say,
I just
go
like
eat
saying that word.
chocolate.
It's also a fun concept.
That's what
Yeah.
I say.
They can
Most of
say
the time.
they can use those molecules to say you're going to die and they're
Yeah, there's danger
antimicrobial.
coming.
Or what's fascinating now is we're starting to learn all the mechanisms of these. They get into our bloodstream, they go to our brain, they bind our enteric cell and endocrine cells in our gut, right?
Yeah.
So you have all these different cells that line our gut. And one of the cool new cells we've learned are neuronal cells. So they're nerve cells that have a calcium channel signal to the brain directly.
Oh.
Crazy.
Yes.
Just learned about
From
that
the
a
GI
second
tract?
ago from you.
In the GI tract. And
Did not know that
You
existed.
didn't know the brain and the gut are connected.
Can we inject something directly in?
Well, yeah, so
How can we modify
they
this?
use rabies virus to study them, right? So you can put a rabies virus with a green tag on it, and then they can track, because the rabies virus tracks through a nerve cell to the brain.
Okay.
And so you can say, okay, here's the gut cell. Let's put the rabies virus in this cell. And then the part of the brain that's connected to that cell it lights up in the brain in the mice or whatever. So what they've learned is that these nerve cells in the gut get signaled, like the bacteria put their little postbiotics out, and those cells then turn on genes to make receptors.
Crazy.
One class of postbiotics do that, and then a different class of postbiotics, so you got to eat your broccoli and your fiber or whatever.
Yeah.
That second postbiotic binds that receptor to then turn on the signal in your brain.
Wow.
So what I'm hearing is what I have always contributed as a function of the probiotic, that why it changes your GI and your mood and your weight and all that.
Yeah.
What you are saying is, yes, the bug is important, but mainly because it metabolizes some prebiotics to make some
It's like a little
postbiotics.
Yeah, and it's spitting out all its molecules to things as it goes through and changing our microbes too. So it's changing the environment of our signals that are happening within our microbes too. It's up and down regulating through quorum sensing and its own signaling. It's like, I think about it like a kindergarten classroom, and you have 30 kindergartners. And if the teacher has like, here's cake and it's a birthday party, and turns the music on and they like destroy everything, all the kids' names are the same. It's still Jill and Susie and whatever. But if that environment signaling changes, that communication, and the lights turn off and it's nap time,
that sounds
all those bacteria's behavior and their impact on their environment change.
right.
And so you have to think about it from this like guild behavior, and the behavior is their metabolism.
Right. So what kind of environment are you creating in there?
And what postbiotics are they making?
Right.
Okay, so let's get back to Thaena. So
Sure.
you read this article, right?
Yes.
And you are like, what if we autoclave or sterilize the stool? What's going to happen? What happens?
Yeah. So I was like, well, what if the problem is infectious disease risk? And I know I can take this poop and put it in the autoclave and kill all the viruses and all the bacteria and like
All the phages that we just learned.
all the threats that are the limiting factor. It essentially becomes like an inert nutrient, or like compost that's totally safe. Will that help my patients with XYZ thing that we are thinking about for probiotics and
fecal transplants, right?
Right.
Well, so I just want to back up a little bit because we talked about C. diff and FMT. What we didn't mention is virtually every chronic disease is being studied to see
Not
if
just-
FMT has an impact.
Not just gut stuff. Like
No,
mental health conditions, metabolic conditions,
Parkinson's,
neurodegenerative.
MS, neurodegenerative conditions, like,
Obesity.
and we're seeing efficacy.
Right.
So that's what we missed. That's big.
Yeah. So hundreds of clinical trials have been done. Some of the more interesting, compelling data is things like hepatic encephalopathy.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Which, like, you can take somebody whose brain is on fire and their liver is, late stage,
not working,
and late stage cirrhosis, dying.
late stage cirrhosis, and they gave them fecal transplants, and they've now done this in like RCTs and open label studies, and their brain swelling goes away, from the fecal transplant.
Wow.
And for us, we were looking at the autism work and Parkinson's, and like obviously my caveat here is we're not treating those diseases with a supplement, but I was like, if that's happening there, and I have these poor patients with like functional IBS, GI issues, and we know this is, and I had worked with quite a few IBS people who wanted fecal transplant because like they can't eat onions and they die a little bit when they go to barbecue.
Quality of life.
You know,
Yeah.
and you're like, I just want you to be like, you've had 200 rounds of antibiotics and chronic UTIs for 20 years, and you have no gut microbiome diversity, and you clearly just need like an overhaul. You know, what if we could just give it a nudge with the sterilized version?
Okay.
And like, it totally worked with some of my patients.
Yeah.
And what was crazy is that we didn't know if it was going to work. And it took me many years to believe it wasn't just my mother, but my mother's pretty good about placebo, you know, but when she was like, this has changed my life and I can poop every morning
I mean, that's
without, you know, laxatives or whatever.
Okay, let me just back up. So you came to this place where you're like, I'm going to try to sterilize stool. I know as a fact, because I happen to know you, that then you took that sterilized stool to earthworms. Or what kind of worm?
Nematode. Yeah.
Okay.
C. elegans.
Okay,
I was like,
sorry.
earthworms.
I was like, this is a cool story. It's important because
I've done a lot of crazy things, and I was trying to figure out where. And I was like, did I give it to my dog? Yes. Did I put it in my garden? Yes. Did I make a face cream out of it? Yes.
By the way, that face cream, I know you're not making it.
Brought you a bottle.
Okay, thank you. I have that's a different story. Okay, so you brought it to nematode.
C. elegans are like a model organism.
Okay. We don't know what that means. Like it's a model, like
so instead of murdering mice, which I did research, and I just don't. I'm haunted by the research I did and anyways, we don't need to talk about it. It's very yucky. So I really didn't want to work in animal models when we started doing research in this from an ethical perspective, because I just think we can learn stuff in other ways. But you know, you can look at cells and culture, and you can look at, you know, you can collect human data, but there's a difference. And so there's a model that I feel comfortable about called C. elegans, and they're little microscopic worms that live in the ground. They're microscopic, so they're not the same as earthworms, but same idea.
Okay, I had worms.
Yeah, and they're cool because they have a GI tract and they have neuronal development, and you can look at their muscle and mitochondria and genes. And there's a lot of genes in C. elegans that have orthologs, i.e. parallel genes that are true in humans.
Good call translating that. I had no idea what it meant.
Yeah. An ortholog is like a version of the gene in a human that does the same thing that they've connected, right? Okay. And so we sprinkled the poop powder, you know, ThaenaBiotic, the sterilized poop from healthy donors, onto these worms. And I'll be fully honest, in the early days, we sprinkled it on some tissue culture cells, and it did nothing. We sprinkled it on some zebrafish, which were fish models development, again, sort of better than mice. I don't know. We can have. Sorry, I'll tell you. I don't know if that was actually.
We don't know any of this.
But it didn't do much, right? It didn't cause any harm. We were like, oh, this is definitely not toxic, but boring.
Right.
And then we sprinkled it on worms and poisoned them. And then we had really significant data. It protected them from the poison.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Better than the positive control in the assay, which was vitamin C. Way protected them. And the poison we use is called paraquat, and it's a model for oxidative stress.
Wow, that's
which
so
is
cool.
super interesting. Yeah. And then we looked at all the genes that were up and down regulated. And this kind of blew. At first I was like, oh, oxidative stress, that's really boring.
Yeah, but it's in it causes everything. It underpins every condition.
Yes. Yeah. And it was very significant for even being preclinical work, in that it up and down regulated all these genes related to mitochondria, oxidative stress, SOD, all kinds, superoxide dismutase, and then even things related to obesity and neuro. Right? And so then you're like, oh my gosh, this is maybe part of the mechanism of why what we eat matters.
Yeah.
You know, actually, blueberries might actually be beneficial if they're converted into the right postbiotics that are impacting. And so since then, we've done much more work into this really cool, which is probably a different episode of dysbiosis as an oxidative stress environment. And what we're starting to learn is that there's work being done, which I'll link to for you guys, out of UC Davis by a researcher named Sebastian Winters and then Andrea McBeth. And what they're showing is that you think about the GI tract, you have bugs that live in oxygen and bugs that don't live in oxygen. So non-oxygen
Anaerobes.
So aerobic, anaerobes are non-oxygen and aerobic are when the oxygen comes in, right?
Yeah.
And the non-oxygen ones are the ones that make the good postbiotics. So we think about short-chain fatty acids and the things that can...
your large bowel mainly?
Mainly large bowel, but it's true throughout the GI tract. I mean, you're not doing a lot of this metabolism except for in the large bowel, because that's where we want this environment. Yeah, that's where you want 20 grams of butyrate or whatever. But when we either get a vagal nerve stimulation that brings in oxygen, or motility slows down and it recruits oxygen, or you eat something with preservatives or paraquat, which is actually an herbicide, right? Wow. You shift the oxidative stress environment, and all these facultative, meaning like they're anaerobes when there's no oxygen, but they can shift to aerobe, facultative anaerobes, shift to aerobic metabolism. So all of a sudden you get those kindergartners going from nap time to mayhem, and then their postbiotics change, and you kick off the leaky gut and the inflammatory cycle. And so you have to turn down this environment of oxidative stress through the tools we use. And so we're starting to appreciate this. So that's why when we found that the poo powder, the ThaenaBiotic powder, did such a good job of shifting oxidative stress, turning on genes within us that turned on antioxidant response genes. It's like it changes that environment, because to be honest, it doesn't make sense that it's 100 milligrams in a capsule, right? And it doesn't make sense that somebody could take that and in 24 hours have a different kind of bowel movement. So like they haven't pooped in 3 days, they take a cap and they have like the perfect Bristol 4, golden poop. And they're like, what is that? And I'm like, it wouldn't be
hard to say.
It's hard to say unless it was something like this environment shift, right? The oxidative stress kind of makes sense, because then the feedback loop calms down, and then you get the motility in the vagus nerve, and the right signaling comes back.
Because the kindergartners are the same. Right. The players are the same. The bugs are the same. It's just how they're talking to each other.
And they're shifting in their metabolism.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Cool. Yeah. And you can get a bloom of Prevotella, or you can get a bloom of just oxygen bacteria, where you get that environment. And then those guys tend to do some bad stuff. I mean, I think the thing we have to move away from with the microbiome is trying to classify things as good or bad, and thinking it about it's the context they're in and their metabolism in that context. Right. So but it's really cool. And obviously we're not talking about the poop pills too much, but they have this, I think it's interesting because they represent a change for us in our paradigm.
Right.
And what we think about, and they're a tool, right, in this toolbox for these patients we deal with that have had trauma, either antibiotic trauma or life trauma or microbiome trauma.
Traumatic brain injury, that affects the microbiome.
Yeah.
So let's actually talk about the poop pills.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
I know.
And then, this is helpful because we're clinicians, and probably half of our listeners are clinicians. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
I know as a fact that you have partnered with clinicians.
Yes.
Can you tell us what the feedback that you're getting from clinicians who are using this in practice?
Yeah.
I will share my feedback afterwards, which is very interesting and different.
Yeah.
But so who have you partnered with? What do you see? And limit it to what you can tell us. Like, I know you've partnered, there's lots of things in the works, but limit it to what you can tell us.
And also how we have a problem of interrupting each other.
No, it's great. I love it.
Just the basics of how to use it, the 101.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say we are a dietary supplement, and now people can buy it on the internet.
Okay, wait,
so
that's
great.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Like a week ago, they went direct to consumer.
Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing.
It's
that's
so cool.
Awesome.
Well, my goal was access, right?
Totally.
Like, poop shouldn't be something that's gay kept.
I mean, it's interesting.
It literally is everywhere.
And I will say,
but good poop is special, and if I'm going to spend all the energy to find this good poop,
and mainly the gatekeeper is the rectum, because people are constipated. You know what I mean? Like,
facts. It's all gonna be okay.
Potty. Okay, go on. So explain.
I don't remember where I was.
Okay, the basics. 101. Like,
How to use it.
do you use it every day? Do you use it twice a day?
Yeah, okay,
With
so
food,
it's-
without food.
It's healthy donor poop. We screen. It's sterilized. It's freeze dried. We process it. We pH adjust it. We try to make the postbiotics be the best they can. And then you take that pill, 100 milligrams. Dosing is anywhere from 1 cap a day as sort of our baseline.
Okay.
But you could take it. You can take 1 cap as needed when you travel or are stressed out for whatever reason, and you can. There's a lot of flexibility because it is like inherently very safe. And then sometimes I will be sick or need something, and I will take like 4 caps, 2 caps twice a day. But I would taper up because it does seem to turn motility on sometimes.
That's huge.
So I just want to start because I am feeling some ick factor. So I just want to clarify for our audience. It does not look like poop.
No,
Like,
it's just a capsule.
it's a capsule, freeze dried with citric acid.
And so I have patients who have small bowel syndrome, who have bowel resections, inflammatory bowel disease, and they will open up the capsule and use minuscule amounts. It is not, you are not, well, yes, you are technically eating that something that used to be poop. It's not a poopy capsule.
Yeah, it's the
Sterilized.
postbiotics that have come from
Doesn't
it.
look like mud.
Yeah.
No.
And that's
like,
important, I think.
It's very, like, we are very intentional to
Maybe
get
not
it to a form that is
palatable.
It
Yeah.
seems like a normal supplement you would
yeah,
take.
in the
Like,
same way you would take an herb that's
Right.
been turned into a capsule.
And
Yeah,
with or without food,
prebiotics.
etc., does it matter?
In the early days, it was like, I'll say we have not done any clinical research or dosing. And so
And we're not treating any
and we're not treating any condition. And this is like sort of our anecdotal observations. But I think it does help with food. I think it is at least anecdotally turning on some digestive enzymes and like helping people either tolerate food better or digest. And I would love to do the research to figure that out. But there's 14,000 small molecules in there at like microgram doses. So do we know what's going on? Probably oxidative stress is the core, but there's lots of nuance. And then some people don't need food and some people do. Some people open the caps and take teeny bits, and other people will take, 6 to 10. And I'll just say that the equivalency is a small dose. So 1 cap is equivalent to 0.5 gram of whole stool. So if you think about fecal transplant was like 35 grams. So this would be like hundreds of caps would be what you would take.
Right.
And this is not fecal transplant, but like I think besides the ick factor inside your face, it's like a very small whisper of
It's working in different ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Low dose.
Yes.
Okay, so that's how you take it. It seems like there's a lot of flexibility within that. You can kind of play around. What are you seeing anecdotally? What's the reports that clinicians are giving you?
Yeah, so we have had providers track registry data in cohorts of patients.
Explain that.
So patients with like a set of diseases, and this is not a treatment, but it's like a support. Mm-hmm. So adults with panda pans and GI issues. Panda pans, do they, your audience know what panda pans?
Define it.
Yeah.
Pediatric,
autoimmune, there's various infectious causes usually are
neuroinflammatory, kind of autism, like spectrum disorder associated neuroinflammation.
And not very well
staph or strep
as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I just say that these are patients, there was early work in autism with FMT, so there was interest in it. And not, treating autism as a disease, but treating components of autism associated OCD and neuroinflammation. Right. And I was really surprised to see improvements and stuff like, and this is anecdotal in a small cohort of like 6, but, lessening of anxiety and mood stuff, which I didn't expect to see.
Yeah.
And, it does seem to help normalize gut or pooping, which is logical. Yeah. And then, it's probably part of this bigger picture of how we modulate our immune system and autoimmunity, right? Like turning off that signal. And, in the same way we do with fiber and nutrient support and herbs, and so I want to couch it like the gut is probably at the root of lots of stuff. And we're starting to tease that apart. But it is interesting to get anecdotal feedback on mood and fatigue and insomnia when I never saw that coming.
Okay, so let me tell you my story. Okay, so so Andrea and I went out to lunch one day and she's like, you should try it. And I was like, okay. And then I was like, I'm not really interested in a organ transplant. FMT is an organ transplant. So it took me a while. And then we went out to dinner again and I was like, fine, okay, I'm gonna try it. So anybody who knows me knows that I rev high. You know what I mean? And if I'm under stress, my sleep is gone because it allows me to rev higher in the middle of the night.
Multiple episodes on
right. And so I was in a period of my life where I happened to be revving high and my sleep was just in the toilet. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try it. Thinking, I rev high and I lean towards constipation. I think that is the
MO. Not having good sleep for like more than one night.
It was going on for weeks. I was having I was under a ton of stress. I was having bad sleep for weeks on end. I was just, and I don't slow down, but I spin wheels, And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. Why not? And I started taking it. I'm like, I think 2 or 3 days in.
This is the sterilized ThaenaBiotic.
This is
not.
No, this is Thaena. I was taking the ThaenaBiotic. I started taking it, and I think 2 or 3 days in, all of a sudden I started sleeping. Like like Ami can sleep anywhere. She gets one night a year where she can't sleep.
This year has pushed me over that shoulder.
Yeah,
it's been about 5 minutes this year.
And that's a bad run for her.
It's a bad year.
Yeah, I'm in like a 3-week run of not that 6 hours. I'm done. So I started taking Thaena, and I run towards constipation, and I do think my poops got better, but I was sleeping. I mean, it was like, and I was sleeping like 6, 7, 8 hours straight. I was waking up clear, not revved. And so what I did was I took it maybe for I went through a 30-pill bottle. Mm-hmm. And then I stopped taking it and I was like, okay, whatever. And then, months and months go by. I was sleeping okay. And then stress hit and I started sleeping a little worse. And I was like, I wonder if it was the Thaena. So then I picked it up. I was like, let me do another run. Within 3 days, I'm sleeping through the night again.
That was just one a day.
That was one pill at that time without food. I just took it when I take my magnesium.
Yeah.
And so then when I was talking to patients about it, my thought was not about constipation. My thought was about my intractable insomnia patients, which are almost as annoying to treat as our Candida patients and our constipation patients.
Yeah.
Like those patients are hard.
They're not annoying. It's
annoying for us.
Yeah, you don't feel like a good clinician. You don't feel like a good clinician. Right.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, there's this product. This is kind of what we know about it. This is what we don't. Do you want to try it for your insomnia? And the feedback I started getting with patients is, oh yeah, I'm sleeping really well, but I'm also having the best poop of my life.
Yeah.
I'm not I was not selling it to them for poop. You know what I mean? I was like, this is a thing that has helped my sleep. Think about it. It's an option.
Yeah.
And so I keep on being like, what is it doing that's making me sleep?
I think it's that oxidative stress.
I have to assume that.
Well, and you were telling us about the rabies shot connection. I obviously can't explain the physiology like you did, but it's doing the brain's getting affected secondarily from.
And we are at such the infancy of understanding that. Another thing I think about, right? So I was born via C-section and had a bunch of hits in early life. My microbiome is not as robust.
You're not one of those
golden child.
I'm not a golden child. No, I was chronically ill. I had Guillain-Barré and JRA, and I was a really sick kiddo, and lots of meds, pharmaceuticals. And so I probably am missing a whole class. I'm missing a whole part of the school, right? To make the good things that probably would help me sleep or not be inflamed. And I do think there's a component of this where we're going to discover that the microbiome is a new class of vitamins.
Totally.
And they're not vitamins like vitamin C, but similarly, we're all kind of have scurvy, and don't know it.
Right.
And whatever it is for you, that nutrient profile that allows your nervous system to calm down and sleep and go into REM and whatever is probably a subset of nutrients that your microbiome's not making because of stress or whatever. Right. And then this is shifting that back for you.
It is so, and I will say till this day, I can pop in when I'm in a stage, take it for about a month. I excuse me, I find that I usually need to re-up every 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
And then if I'm more stressed, I need to re-up sooner.
And it works better for people that are, and I would say this to your audience, it is, I think, best used for people who are disrupted, dysbiotic, in a state of
That's impossible
Rather
to
than-
find in today's day.
right. But every once in a while, I get totally healthy people. They're like, "It's great. I'm just going to take it prophylactically," and I'm like,
it's not for
well,
I mean, I don't
Maybe-
care, but
right,
like
right.
that's not. I think you need to take it when you're disrupted.
Yeah.
I think that's when it mechanistically is going to do something, whether you're in a flare or an extra stress or an oxidative stress.
What about travel prevention? Because
It's
that's
great.
really
Yeah,
intriguing
yeah.
for me when you know you're going to be assaulted by things. Food
Yeah.
that's foreign, bugs
It's
that
quite
are
the
Yeah.
word,
foreign.
Rebecca.
Huh?
It's quite the word.
Well,
I mean, it's a good word though.
I mean, have you had traveler's diarrhea in Mexico?
Yeah.
I mean,
Brings
I've been
us
to
all a
India
lot of
multiple
business.
times.
Yeah,
I don't go to
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't go to
it's-
Mexico, that's what she's saying.
It's a huge disruption.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have a protocol. I think we have a whole episode
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of pills.
It's a
Yeah.
lot of pills.
It's a lot of pills, and it works pretty well
Yeah.
for people. But, you know, if this could even get to a more foundational, like,
Yeah.
root of
Yeah.
what's going on and kind of set your gut immune system up, I would imagine.
I mean, again, anecdotally, like when I'm in Mexico City, I have my friends take it, we all take it, and I do think it takes the edge off. I like, and or helps you from really
Right.
going down hard. I don't have data for that, but that's my experience.
Another question is the motility piece is
Yeah.
really interesting to me because this, like, you know, SIBO-induced or post-infectious induced motility issue, or from scarring or whatever conditions that can cause all that for people. Do you think it's interacting with our neurotransmitters?
I think of it as an orchestra, right?
Mhm.
Mouth to anus. And there's a lot of players.
Yeah.
And you have to have everybody playing in tune to get that perfect
Yeah.
Mhm.
motility. And I think that this is just nudging everybody back into tune
Yeah.
in a very simple sense. I
If
don't
it's-
know mechanistically, but I
Yeah.
do think that it doesn't I think of it as like a buffer
Yeah.
for the perturbations.
Mhm.
That's
If it seems to be affecting transit and pooping potentially and mood and sleep, that sounds like, you know, whether it's oxidative stress route or, you know, getting to something neurotransmitter, just, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, so just to say, at this point, you know, this whole concept of psychobiotics,
Right.
we knew many of the neurotransmitters are formulated by the microbiome.
Yeah.
Like, what I'm hearing is we've learned, especially over the last decade, been this rapid amount of data that's been released that the microbiome is a foundational controller of a whole lot of virtually every system in our body.
yeah.
And we know that the microbiome is different in people with all these various conditions, like exclusively mental health or exclusively metabolic or exclusively digestive.
Mhm.
Like folks with IBS have different microbiome profiles
Yeah.
than people who don't.
And this is an option to correct that disruption.
And the metabolism, like you think about SIFO or EMO even as a shift in the metabolic snapshot of what's going on. And how do we, you know, I really love biocidin and
Herbal,
herbal
antimicrobial,
antimicrobials, and
yeah.
even rifaximin can like be miraculous for patients,
Totally.
right? And like if you need to knock stuff down, but then also nurture on the other side of that, I like this as a tool. I mean, I did just have bacterial pneumonia, which sucked, and I had to take some like really hardcore antibiotics. But I was like, okay, I'll just like take my poop
Yeah.
pills with
Did
it
you take it during or after? Or
during
both?
because it's already
Okay.
killed.
I love that
Yeah.
because that's a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Fine. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a sterile substance that we are ingesting.
Yeah, and there
So
was. I
interesting.
mean, actually, I read a paper like last night. It was it's different because again, nobody else is autoclaved
Uh-huh.
Right.
poop, which I think we'll get there eventually, or like I'm hoping researchers go tackle this once. But they're looking at fecal filtrates, and there was this really interesting study in mice, and they were looking at a fecal filtrate, i.e., no bacteria, plus charcoal in mice with antibiotics,
Mhm.
and it was actually the fecal filtrate
Huh.
in the charcoal that had the best outcome,
Wow, wow.
which
Okay.
is super
Interesting.
interesting.
And also very different things.
Totally. I don't know why they added charcoal. I was trying to figure that out in the
Why?
methods.
Yeah.
So can I ask a quick question? So generally, this is not something someone should take continuously for years.
I have patients who are on it continuously if they have chronic autoimmune diseases.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
that's
mean,
what
we
I was
have
trying to
patients
figure
that
out.
have been taking it every day for 2+ years. I think you just, again, we know
Depends,
nothing.
right,
You
right.
have to be intuitive.
Yeah.
And again, and that's where it's like hard for me working with clinicians because they're like, what's a protocol? And I was like, everybody's microbiome is totally different. You got to figure that out with them. We're all our own. And I do think that if people.
I also love that. Thank you. That's very helpful. Yeah, like it's very helpful and it's also very honest.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I at this point in my professional career of medicine have a bias with the more confident your clinician is and the more they sound like they know everything, the more concerned I am about them as a clinician.
Right, yeah, me too. Except for the occasional person that's just so good.
I feel like I just read a statistic where there are 2,000 articles every month coming out about the microbiome. We literally know nothing.
Yeah. I do think it's cool because it turns out we know a ton based on thousands of years of dietary and herbal and nutritional modulation, and even just the way we think about mental health, meditation and how that impacts the vagus nerve. And like all of a sudden there's this framework for us to be like, oh, of course that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yes.
And you are still doing some trial and error.
Yeah.
I mean, I think psych meds and metformin and a lot of these pharmaceuticals that we're like, why is it that like one patient reacts totally differently? We're starting to appreciate it because metabolically it's the microbiome. That's the first pass. Like we used to think the liver was the first pass, but it's actually the microbiome that's the first pass.
Now, in hindsight, I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And how it interacts with our genes, as you were saying, because that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
Metabolism.
I know. And so you can just, I think first and foremost, the impetus was like, let's make sure this is safe. And I feel very confident about that. Like we've been tracking side effects and adverse events for many years. And sometimes it does make people poop too fast or more.
How old's the company?
So we started using it clinically with patients like during COVID because I couldn't treat people with FMT.
Totally.
I couldn't test it. And I had given it to my mom a little bit before that. Some of my patients and early adopters.
So 2020-ish.
2020, yeah. We filed the patent and started the company in 2019.
Okay.
And then we've been using it clinically and we have like thousands of providers that have used it. And then as of last week, we are now direct to consumer.
Okay.
So cool.
How do people get it?
On the internet.
Okay, so tell us about
our website.
About the internet.
And so
not on Amazon. We don't have it on Amazon. It's at ThaenaBiotic, and Thaena is THAENA because it's the Greek goddess of death and rebirth.
I love that. It's like the phoenix.
Yeah, and like it's the feminized Thanatos. You think about, but the good kind.
Go us.
Whatever. Sorry.
Okay, so Thaena.com is where they find it.
Yeah, Thaena.com, and then because we're doing direct to consumer and affiliates, and I can support friends, and we can all support each other. You do / Turd Nerds.
Okay, with an S. Turd Nerds with an S.
Yeah.
We'll post the link in the show notes and on all of the platforms that you guys can tune into us.
Yeah, so Thaena, THAENA.com / Turd Nerds, TURDNERDS.
That's us.
And then you'll get a discount on the product and support this podcast too through the affiliate link.
Amazing.
And so it's $150 for the 30 cap for 1 month. And you can buy a 90 cap and get a little bit of a discount. And we have subscriptions, and then we have a 7 cap pack if you just want to try it and make sure it's a good fit. For travel. It's called Thaena to go, which I thought was really funny and like not my idea. I'm one of our advisors, but yeah. And we're gonna hopefully start. So we have a collaboration with a group called People Science, who are super cool. They're decentralized clinical data tracking, and I'm really excited because what we'll start doing is having an app, self-select. But if you collect data and tell us about how it helps your insomnia or whatever, we'll give you discounts on it.
Cool. So you can publish case studies.
So we have to start to collect data. It's hundreds of thousands of dollars to run a placebo-controlled RCT, which I would love to do and want to do in the future. But first we have to get enough collective understanding to know what we want to measure. And I think that's what we've learned in the last couple of years is I never would have expected it does the things it does, and there's definitely people who respond really well and other people does nothing for, and sometimes I think it's going to do something for somebody if you've had a colectomy or something, you're like, oh, this will really help you. And sometimes it does. And then it's just like, we know nothing.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
And my other question is, I'm starting to like pay attention to the oral microbiome. I'm just curious how affecting the GI microbiome is going to affect the oral microbiome, which is going to affect the future of the GI microbiome.
Yeah.
And I'm curious.
And I like want to make a toothpaste.
Yeah. And that might be a harder sell. Okay. Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for making this product. It is a very cool way.
And there's nothing else like
nothing.
Thing.
No,
there's
nothing, and there's not even anything close to it.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's cultured probiotics that are killed, and those are called postbiotics. And they're heat killed via pasteurization.
Yeah.
Right.
And then there's pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And we are the only human-derived.
So it contains the whole
microbiome of a healthy person.
Amazing.
All the tablets.
I also just want to say that I like how you talk very sciencey, but you also exclusively use the word poop instead of stool.
You have to be forward, because like I had this patient come to me and she was like, I got this probiotic from my doctor, and then I found out it was poop, and I was like, oh my god, I never want that to happen again. Like I want people to have consent.
Yep.
I want there to be a consent, and I have to just be honest about it, and I think we can destigmatize it and be really blunt that it's safe
forward,
and it's like, and it's decoupled from the ick factor, and it's processed in the same way we process stuff, but like, we get stuff from organs of animal, like for sure. And I just really never want somebody to feel like they were duped.
For sure. And you're in a really safe space. Our logo is
the Turd
pile of poop,
Nerds.
and we are the Turd Nerds.
So thank you guys for tuning in.
That was just
Thank
awesome.
you, Dr. McBeth, for joining us.
Answering all our questions.
Yes.
That was amazing.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today. Stay tuned. We release episodes every 2 weeks.
If you like this episode, please subscribe and don't forget to rate and review us to help spread the Turd Nerd word.